Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings Here. Inmendham. Anyway. Yeah. Subject is, I hate to say the words, objective reality. Objective value is the real point. And I could go back to something like Sam Harris, who did a pretty good job of making this argument in his moral landscape kind of book. And, and it's really not about morality. It's just about reasoning and deduction and facts. And so I would argue, that, people think, or people will argue or state that somehow our feelings are subjective, when I'm arguing that no, we don't subjectively feel. I mean, we don't, the fact that we have feelings isn't in some way illegitimate because it's not reasonable, or it's not this, or it's not that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why we feel. It just matters what we feel. And so it doesn't matter if we had completely opposite experiences with feelings. That is, that if everybody felt good when they saw blue, and instead you felt good when you saw red, and bad when you saw blue. Like I said, if everything was just reversed and you weren't anywhere close to the same, like it felt good to have your fingers crushed under a car wheel or something. And it felt, all the good things that feel good are always kind of private. Anyway, but let's just say all that was reversed. So what? So it doesn't matter why you feel good, or what. Like just kids in general, right? I could just make the argument that babies don't appeal to me at all. They're revolting and creepy. As soon as I hear a baby crying, I just kind of cringe. There's just nothing about human, air active fetuses, whatever you want to call them, those little blobs of shit. Just vomit worthy, frankly. And other people have this whole different experience, like it's some sort of precious, cute thing. And no, kittens are precious and cute, but human babies, not even close. But anyway, but what's the difference? That part doesn't matter. The part that I cringe and have a sensation, that's the part that has significance as an event in the universe. What causes that event doesn't matter. So even if you were a sadist and a this and a that, there would still be things that would make you unhappy and things that would make you happy, things that would be comfortable and things that would be uncomfortable. So, and that's the only thing that matters, is that you're having a sensation that is unpleasant and perhaps even torturous and intolerable. So that's the real subject. And people want to make the subject why we feel, what causes us to feel, instead of the subject just being the fact that we have sensations. So this is what a theme I have been, beating on you lately. And it's, and because it's just to this function that, let's just understand what we are. We're these biological machines. We have this faculty to do reasoning and logic. And I'm just saying, if we ever apply it without using subjective opinion instead of what we can objectively know. And so we objectively know that organisms like humans, certainly the whole class of mammals and lots of other birds, lots of stuff, are obviously sensate. They're experiencing their existence, and they have They do things that cause them pleasure and things that cause them pain. And the pain is definitely by its just nature. The unpleasant feelings are unpleasant. That's their property, okay? That's the category they fit in. That's the category that is intrinsic to the experience. And it doesn't need qualification by what caused it. It just is a fact. So it's like, who cares what, there could be 17 million reasons why a dam collapses. Does it matter what the reason is? Isn't the real thing the event of the dam collapsing and everybody being washed away and all that kind of crap? What caused it, okay, isn't meaningful information. Now, unless you're going to do something about causes to prevent it in the future and all that kind of crap. So the subjective causes are what might, generally speaking, be a threat to people, in the sense that it can be generalized that most people will be harmed by something. Then we can put that in a category and say that it's obviously there's a good probability that we can prevent a lot of harm by preventing whatever causes this giant category of people to have an unpleasant experience. So diseases and such, most people don't want one. Okay, there's not too many people that are all gung-ho to get the plague or something. So those things can put into an obvious, there's such a high correlation between the likelihood of a negative experience rather than a positive experience that we don't have to consider, okay, the fact that there might be 4 people in the history of mankind that would drink out of a plague glass or something. So so again, it's just sort of a, I don't want to turn into like an AI argument, but I'm just saying, if you didn't have your whole cultural bullshit and all your personal fantasy bullshit about all the interesting things you would have done if you could have your life over again, or if you could make a perfect you, all the great stuff you could do in a virtual reality or some other kind of crap, okay, and just viewed life itself for what it is, which is you're just creating organisms that have this temperament, this capacity to manifest sensations, and that they tend to do it, rather badly, in the sense that there's an awful lot of grief, hardship, sadness, tyranny. I'm trying to think of some good word for all of that part that is so tedious and redundant and and uninteresting. All the little crap, like taking a crap, all the little crap you have to do in your life. That's not very rewarding or interesting or fun, and you just endure it, okay, and move on. And then there's this, the tiny little percentage of stuff that really are your moments where you have your eureka moment, or you have your I'm free from prison, the good feelings you get on a Friday when the whistle blows or something. And most of it is not that. And some of it is quite horrible. And again, all of us, if you're listening to this, haven't died yet. And that's a big part of your life, is going to be that process of being taken, okay, dragged out off the stage. And you can just be logical about it and realize that, yes, the average is some sort of 7 or 8 months worth of you could almost argue horror. Just it can get really, really, really bad, and so even in this position we're in, I could argue that yes, even without death, I don't need death to scare me. I'm already frightened enough, just by the prospect of all the little encumbrances and debilitations and things that can happen. So you know that physically, especially when you get older, nothing's working quite, as good well as it did. You can't see, you can't, a lot of stuff just ain't working. And you know that it can go to all kinds of things, and you could end up with diabetes or some other kind of condition that's not life-threatening, but will be a pain in the ass. A hip replacement or some other crap and blah, blah, blah. It's not going to be, a positive, and it's going to be a significant negative, put in the context of, some perspective regarding what can be accomplished in a life, and whether you can ever finish one. Whether you you actually do finish your life. You live it, and you're doing your art, or you're doing your thing, and then you say, "Oh, that's enough. I'm all finished." I mean, it's just not a likely event. So that's part of just the psychology that keeps us invested in living and being alive, is that we have created this capacity to do all this thinking and articulating and bullshit, mostly. And we've acquired a gratification reflex to demonstrating our prowess at it, how good we are at it. And it's just an addiction. So it's all this psychology that gives people some notion that they're winning, and that this is something you give to somebody as a gift. It's the opportunity to fail dismally. No, you don't. If you love somebody, you don't have them. You don't make them. You have to pretty much despise your children to have them. You have to. It's almost like you're just saying, I want to pay you back for some revenge or something. It's just like it's like keying somebody's car, giving birth to them. That's just, you're just opening it up to all kinds of rust and ruin. Because that's the averages. You just look. You don't have to. It's not that hard to find all of the miserable and horrible outcomes. And the fact is, even the winners don't look like winners to me. I mean, they're they're on the front page winning one day, and the next day they're on some list of some child molester or something, and humiliated. But apparently, that's part of the character of people. They they don't commit suicide. They just make a new church, and start all over. I'm sorry, I sinned. I violated every possible decency rule you believe in. Sorry, I won't do it again. Especially the lying part. I won't lie. I don't know. Hard to even understand. But we know it. There's lots of grief. Lots of suicides and all kinds of, drug abuse and just sad, dismal, pathetic, endings. So even the winners don't, I don't know if if I have to take the whole winning package, I don't know if I want it. Frankly, I mean, and again, I've made this point before. I mean, I'm just as an observation. I'm just saying, I can't pull any heroes out of the human race and say, "Gee, I wish I could live that person's life," because they've done everything the right way, and they haven't debased themselves with some sort of nonsense. It's like you have some respect for some popular idol, You know, and then they marry a 12-year-old when they're 95, and you're just like, what the fuck? Oh, you know, it's just so embarrassing. You know, and people get, you know, they get fat and all kinds of stuff happens, and then they never even go out in public anymore. And, yeah, you know, those aren't great, successful, wonderful lives. You know, it's tragic failure mostly all the way down. And, you know, I mean, I brought it up like 8 times maybe. I just remember Farrah Fawcett, you know, when she was pretty, you know, halfway through her miserable death, and you know, she just was like, you know, an unrecognizable sick person, and you're just like, yeah, so you know, you're some definition of perfect, and then you're you know, and you're a big winner, you know, and in the end, you leave Las Vegas with nothing, and with, you know, without, you know, in a much lesser condition. So, so the logical AI kind of question, I'm just saying, let's just say if you were an honest intelligence and they gave you this picture of these little machines on Earth, and they'd all done all this stuff millions and billions of times. You know what I mean? They've eaten the cheese billions of times. You know, they've had plenty of BJs, and they've done plenty of this, and they've done plenty of that, and they've won and defeated and lost, and they've done all this stuff over and over, and it's all so formulaic. So that's all you're playing for is, oh, well, how long shall we make the play run? You know, it's like some Broadway play, you know, that just runs forever until, you know, people start throwing bricks at their at the TV because they ran a commercial for that shit again. You're so sick of it. You know, it's been so overplayed and droned into you, and you're like, oh, fuck you. Not interested. And, you know, obviously I, you know, have that sense in that I've lived too long. I've lived too many times almost. I mean, I can't even, you know, it all, I'm feeling the futility and soap opera-ness of all of the silly drama, the silly bullshit you have to fight through, all these goddamn fucking annoying little battles with morons, you know, dancing around everything, you know. Oh, I can't let them know my email address. Oh, I can't do this, and I have to be safe from that, and I have to protect myself. Oh, and I have to do this, and I have to do, you know, I have to play some lying, scummy game. You know, you can't even interact with the government at all with not being so careful because, yeah, it's full of a bunch of malicious psychos. You know, the whole thing has gone postal. You know, they're just looking for an excuse to be a menace and a terrorist. You know, they're the real terrorists, frankly, by percentages. You know, the cops, the whole bullshit. You're just like, how can they keep doing this shit? You know, they get caught, it's on TV, and they just keep doing it? I mean, it's just like, fuck this. Too stupid. Yeah. Anyway, that's sort of off the subject. The fact that the AI could figure out that civilization isn't working, you know, that the whole thing, the whole concept is degraded into the toilet. It is just winds into some, you know, a bunch of idiots with a bunch of high technology that was created when the world wasn't full of idiots. Some kind of notion like that. You know, just not a good circumstance. So even for those reasons, it would be good, you know, not to play with it. But that's sort of just the argument. Is you're just saying, what could the AI make of this? So if it just showed up and found the Earth, and then there was a little piece of instructions or whatever tied, you know, and it could just read it and say, okay, the Earth is 4 billion years old, and this happened, the evolution thing, the brain thing happened, you know, the nucleic cell, neurons, thinking machine, feeling machines. You know, could it turn that into something like, wow, this is so amazing and interesting? Or would it, you know, calculate it out and say, well, they say they have these feelings and that they feel like they need to do this, and you know, but it just looks like they're doing a lot of, you know, squirming, like, you know, cut up bugs or something. You know, you know, an awful lot of that's going on. And they, you know, they all do testify that, yeah, that's no good, that's no fun. So why risk doing that? Is there something you're accomplishing? They're curing a disease? Does the universe have a headache and humanity is the magic aspirin? No. Yeah, none of that is a reason to be a creator, to think creation of this. You know, creating objects that'll make videos on YouTube trying to explain to morons that hitting yourself in the head with a hammer is stupid, and but it's not quite as stupid as having a baby. Yeah, because at least it's not cruel. You know, yeah, yeah. There's no. All right. Anyway. But that's just the real subject. Is there an intelligent way of just defining the circumstance as being one where you're just creating machines that have very valuable experiences? And the argument is the negative ones are like poison apples. You just can't put more than one poison apple in the pie and it's still edible. The bad experiences leak a stink and a stench that just touches everything and turns it into shit. I sort of pointed this out with, you know, just my own personal experience of memories and such, and how the bad endings connected with anything are so fucking profoundly evil, because you can't even... You can never have a thought about the beautiful interaction you had with somebody or with an animal, for example, without the memory of the, you know, bad ending smearing its poo all over those memories. And that's insidious. Yeah, I mean, that's the only word it's insidious. And so yeah, so once in a while, you know, like my parents got off kind of easy. They didn't have to die horribly, and they didn't have any horrible, awful sicknesses or anything, so there wasn't too much to taint. But one of my sisters died when she was 32 or 3, whatever, and that was horrible. And again, it's impossible to separate all my memories of her as a kid when growing up with her and all that kind of stuff without it tainted by the bad death. And again, some of the most cherished, you know, relationships I've had in my life have been ruined as memories, you know, by the bad endings. And you would think that would be at least a logical minimum for people if they took thinking and being rational seriously, that the rational minimum would be, wow, we ought to clean up that death thing. We ought to make that as graceful and as fail-safe as possible. Death should be a very fail-safe, you know, let's do it right kind of thing. And it's just amazing that these sadistic religious fuckers who don't even believe in their fucking gods, you know, with any sincerity. I mean, the stories are ridiculous, and they sin all over the place, which just proves they don't believe it. They know they're not risking hell by calling the hooker. They know it. Because they don't have any confidence in this stupid fable. But they'll sacrifice, billions of people dying badly on the altar of bullshit. So yeah, obviously they're not doing philosophy very well, or logic, or reasoning, and all their being is a bag of psychological puke. So anyway, on that note, we'll take a pause and such. Yeah, seems a reasonable time. Yeah, all right, I'm back. So I was thinking, of stuff, and so the last thing that occurred to me, and that my brain said, okay, this is probably a point to make, was just an example of the psychology part that interferes in so much. So you could argue that first I thought of this because of the modern mystic has written some AI babble. So him and an AI got together to write some kind of crap about what it is to have a brain, and it's just such a pile of shit. But yes, it's very well written, but it's just shit. I mean, 3 paragraphs or 300 paragraphs, it's all the same thing. It just keeps saying the same thing in a different way. And so, and all, well, it's all nice grammar, but it really is just gilding lilies or some kind of bullshit. It's just all veneer, and there's no substance anywhere. It's just rambly colors. And that was kind of the funny part too, because the only other video he's posted is some video of the art he does now, which is just this finger painting shit. So you just, it is strange. I don't even know how somebody who plays chess regularly could paint abstractions, just because the two concepts are so different. One is so precise and mechanical and strategic in terms of, you have to follow the right patterns and all that kind of stuff, and the other's just chaos and mush. But anyway, so the thought of AI and as a tool for presenting an argument, for making one, and I'm probably going to be one of the last people to show up to that trough. Like a lot of technology, I will be dragged to it. And part of that's just psychology, because it's like part of me says I should be able to do this, So to me, it's almost like if you were going to go to a carnival or something, and there was some little thing where you shoot the ducks, and you had the AI do it for you. It's just like, it's just conceding some sort of lameness that no, I can't do it. And in a way, it's just kind of just cheating and dishonest. And we should, as human beings, be able to communicate with each other in some sort of real way, not in this manufactured, make it as propagandist and sell it kind of way. It's just so Ringling Brothers, the whole Barnum thing. You can fool some, you can, you can polish turd all you want, and you can sell it, as long as it's shiny and you threw some glitter on it, people will buy turd. And that's what the real story is for me personally. But again, a real part of it is that I don't like surrendering and conceding. I'm not articulate enough or smart enough to compose an argument that can persuade somebody. I have to rely on this crutch. And that more than anything is keeping me disinterested. But maybe in the future. I guess another component to it is that I stated before, I'm not very good at reading speeches, and so it's probably scripts aren't going to work for me. find somebody else who's good at that, because yeah, it's not my thing. So maybe I could write scripts and have somebody else read them. I don't know. I don't know. So that's, it's all, there's so much of psychology that gets in the way of these conversations and people's reactions to how they think things should be done and what the right procedures are and what is appropriate and inappropriate and blah blah, and it all has to do with these bits of these memes, these psychological memes of value and meaning. And again, it's all still got all this taint of kids at Christmas or something. So it made me just think of how you could manipulate me, okay, with sympathetic stories. So to me, one of the greatest Christmas concepts, okay, was in Rudolph, story, in the sense of the island of misfit toys, and the idea of this flying lion, that went across the world and found the losers and protected them on an island. But now, unfortunately, they didn't have much to do, so they just sat around and lamented how crappy their life was, which, if you're going to take them to an island, I guess it should be a lot more fun, where they can just forget about being losers and forget about being, a Bob in the box instead of a Jack in the box and that kind of stuff, and just get over it and, enjoy the environment, have enough games for them to play where they're always entertained. Something like that. Well, anyway, but just the idea of it, okay, and because of that, I would cut the rest of the bullshit so much slack just because I'm saying, well, this is a great concept. Any other theme. So it almost, you could almost say, like for a Christmas Carol, just the idea of the story, the idea of redemption, and just the idea of recognizing where you had huge, a lack of vision, where you didn't see what was really happening, and so the idea of dreaming a story, a narrative where you're exposed to a reality you didn't see, and very powerful. And so it's enough to ignore all the the bullshit of well, Bob Cratchit's an asshole. He's got way too many kids and way too little money. Again, it's just it's a story about morons being assholes, and it's almost like how much sympathy can you have? Because they're just going to make more of these morons to go spread their pain and suffering, their disease. They really are little bringers of the plague. So I'm just, in just my sloppy individual human way, trying to give you a sense that maybe you're driven by some psychological bullshit. Maybe the things that make you think there's some purpose and function to a bunch of biology eating each other, maybe that is a delusion that's so far from the reality that you're really missing so much of the truth. So just saying that, the little fish thing popped into my head, right? So that stuck with me hard, I could say, right? The first time I saw a picture of the big fish eats the medium-sized fish, and the medium-sized fish is eating the smaller fish, and that hit me like a mixture of Dickens and Poe. It was just this most profoundly horrible concept that, oh my shit, you mean that's what we're made out of? That's all it is. And you know, and the idea of big fish in a little pond versus, you know, big fish in a big pond. I don't know what. Yeah, what do you mean? Little fish in a small pond. Well, whatever. The idea that it's just this perception of your pond size, and you know, and it's again just a misperception of the reality. You know, thinking you're winning when, you know, the game you're playing is called suck. You know, and you're a great sucker player. You know, you're not winning. Let's see what else. Yeah. Even something like sports. You know, like you could fall for that as a kid and think, oh, this is important what these people are doing, and this is something we should, you know, watch. And wait a minute, no, this is the biggest pile of absolute stupid garbage possible. What? How could this be good for our brain to think this crap? Who can jump the highest, right? Who can do the silliest thing off of a ramp going 50 miles an hour? Who the fuck, you know, would think up something that stupid as a thing to admire or to appreciate or to be caught up in as an interesting event, a story to be told? No. Some human figuring out the blue LED, that's a good story. You know, some person curing a disease or doing something, those are great stories. That's the stuff you should stand on a podium and get your gold medal. Fucking jumping higher? Fuck that. Too ridiculous. I mean, it's just so humiliating. And so, you know, there was some point in my life where that realization fell on me that, holy shit, is this ever stupid? And I couldn't believe I was duped by it, you know. But it's just that everybody's doing it, so you think this is some sort of a rational thing to do, is to, you know, involve yourself in some sports soap opera. You know, you know, whatever he is, Bangy Wangy, you know, hit his 945th home run, you know, and seduce Farty Warty's wife or something and have a wonderful life. You know, it's just so stupid to get caught up in that crap, to be caught up in that crap. Anyway, and you know, so you know, it's almost like a disease. It is, you know, it's like a little heroin addiction or some other kind of. It's just another thing you have to look out for in your life, that you're going to get caught up thinking something that's so fucking stupid and unimportant is somehow important. You know, and you can see that with people, though. You know, the fashion thing and jewelry and fingernails and all kinds of, you know, horse shit. Being made important when it couldn't be, you know. It's just so pitiful to think that, yes, with all the shit that's going on planet Earth, all the kids that have been abandoned and are, you know, being raised on the street and all the other kind of crap that's going on, and this is the shit people are worried about. You know, how many layers of wax are on my car? It's really, you know, pathetic. Yeah, it's not much you can say. And that I have to, you know, and that you have to make these arguments, you know, like, guess what? I think you're humiliating yourself. Duh. You know, with just how silly your life is. What you think's important. As it ain't important. And pause. Yeah, because I can. Alright, so having pointed out that it's all trivial, I will now, you know, reminisce about the trivial things, that were precious to me, let's just say, you know, that I found parts of my life experience that that just leave this weird thing in your head, you know, this ambiguous blob of memory that you just can't, you know, you can't resolve it into anything. It wasn't the greatest tragedy, but it was something. So I remember my friendships, didn't have too many of them, but you know what I had was meaningful, you know, good friends. And we do stupid stuff. And so I thought of poo sticks from Winnie the Pooh, where, yeah, we would throw sticks in a stream. There was a stream in my backyard, essentially. And we would race them in the sense that you would throw rocks or do whatever you could to navigate your stick. And it would have to go through rapids and different things. And you'd have a strategy of going different routes and, you know, to victoriously get to some destination where your stick was in the lead and you won. There was a point where, you know, friends kept moving, and, well, the two friends, frankly, and one moved and then the other one moved, and I had nobody to play poo sticks with. And it was just a thing I enjoyed doing in the summer. It was a thing to do, and it couldn't be done anymore. And the other one was walking fences, you know, walking a wobbly farm type style fence. And you know, there was nobody to do it with, and so it just kind of lost, you know, the competition kind of loses the thrill when there's nobody to, there's no the cameras aren't on. You know, there's no performance requirements. It's just, you know, it's just practicing. Then it's just not quite the same thing. Yeah, and the best fence to do it on was the fence that the person, you know, lived at in, you know, his house. And so once he moved, I couldn't go walking on the new people's fence. You know. So and yeah, but they're just little things, you know, but they're these things that, you know, you lose, and you're just saying, gee, I miss that. You just can't keep those things, and that's just part of life. And so this is just another example of, you know, your pets dying and all the other crap you have to endure, that these little stable bits of life that make sense to you, you know, where you derive some kind of I mean, it's a, you know, there's enough competition, there's enough this, enough that, you know, it's, you know, and I could just argue that, you know, that's playing catch, you know, baseball, throwing back and forth. You know, it's another thing. There was a point where there's just nobody available, and so you can't do it anymore. And I miss it, you know. It's weird, you know, to just be without those parts of your life, and you just, you know, you lose all this other stuff. You lose your hair, you lose this, you lose that, and you're just, you know, like I said, it's not this monstrous tragedy, but it's, if you add them all up, you know, they starts to be a pretty heavy lead ball, you know, that you are chained to. So, you know, you could use the Scrooge analogy and say you know, there's the lead balls of your bad acts to the world, and then there's the lead balls of just the stuff you've had to let go of and move on, you know, from that you've had to make some, you know, crappy transition, and you miss the life you had, and now you're living as a diabetic, or, you know, whatever the thing is, and fuck that. Anyway, you know, as part of the bargain, it's not a bargain. It's really is it probably is a good artistic analogy, is to kind of recognize that as a person we are covered in these chains as you get older, as you live your life, of all of these sad memories, and bad experiences. And their weight is just tremendous. And here you are trying to swim and keep your head above the quicksand water, quicksandable water, whatever. And, it's so the quicksand thing just remind me. My father fell in quicksand, right? It's just kind of funny, but you think quicksand is some kind of jungle thing and all that kind of crap, and it's really just quick mud, and it's underneath the surface of water. So there's water, and then there's this quick mud. It just doesn't have a bottom, and we were just fishing, and all of a sudden, it just almost disappeared, and I was 10. It's so doing this. Get a stick. Get this. This breaks and all of that kind of comical relief. So he never was up to his neck, but it really was. Again, one of those experiences where you just say, "Well, fuck this. This is what I'm playing. This game. I don't want to play this game where I watch my father sink into quicksand and die. I don't want to play that game. No, fuck you." I mean, I have to say it to my father. Yeah, fuck you. What the hell did you think is a good idea? I'll take my kid fishing and, get swallowed up by quicksand and he'll have to live with it for the rest of his life. Fuck that. Too ridiculous. So, how can you make an argument for this imposing this soap opera crapola that we live? This this ridiculous existence. It's not, you got the ticks and you got spiders and you got Lyme disease. 10 times I had Lyme disease. 10 times. All these parasites, mosquitoes coming to get you, and then there's all this other, the human ticks. All the other crap out there, trying to ensnare you and for their purposes, just fuck this. Too stupid. And we haven't died yet. Yeah. This is the part, you have all these chains and all this shit, and then you have to face this horrible condition of your genetic code or whatever else that's going to sit there and try to kill you. And ooh. So now my brain just said, well, that's an interesting point, right? Is it worse to be threatened with death after you've lived a long life, you're really tired, you're really pulling a lot of weight, of all these burdens of your memories and your regrets and your other shit, and now somebody's going to hunt you down, or is it better to be killed when you're young and you're in the game and you're fighting and you're strong? And I don't have the answer to that, but it just seems almost like it's almost more insidious to be hunting down the injured animal, the tired, weary one. But I can't say which one I would prefer. I mean, it's pretty hard to say, right? Ooh, yuck. No, yuck. Yeah, it's almost, I guess you need to get used to the stench, of life, and so at least you have some sense of the stench, and, you've been here and done this, and so it'd be almost worse to take you at your strongest and your freest, and then imprison you, with doom, anyway. A little bit off the subject. So I will take another pause and we'll see if we can clean this ending up. I mean, there's no, the big point is that 90% of some conversation we can have is always going to be polluted. That 90% of it is just pollution with a bunch of emotional and subjective crap that we think's important. And the only thing that's logically and rationally real is the fact that we are experiencing sensations and we are having good and bad experiences. And that's the only thing that means something in this whole silly story. Now, obviously it means something if you're deriving pleasure by something else being harmed. That's a more complicated psychology thing. It's not just choosing an apple or an orange. Does it matter whether you choose apple and call apple the winner or you call orange the best fruit ever? Is that contest mean anything? No. Okay. Is picking a right side mean something? No. But obviously it does mean something if you're deriving pleasure from, stroking dirt or crushing, a feeling organism to death. Yes, then it's consequentially different because it involves something that can feel. So when it doesn't involve anything that can feel, though, that's subjective, that is truly meaningful. I mean, meaningless. When it involves your subjective feelings about consequences that will make other things feel something, well, then your subjectivity matters. But the point is that rationally, the only thing that we're really saying that you can put as values on the piece of paper is the experiences. Causes really aren't that important, and the only thing that matters is what happened to you. That's it. What did you experience? What has been experienced? And I just would argue that anybody who fairly views what has happened could just argue that the plague was too high a price to pay. That we'll never be able to derive enough Disney World fun stories to ever compensate for all of that horrible misery. Just wouldn't be possible. You could just have Disneyland forever. In the universe, you could just have the universe just full of Disneyland, and it's just not going to make up for that ball of plague death. Because there's just nothing to the Disneyland except the subjective mechanism that says, oh, I had fun. Yeah, but the fun is really just relieving your tedium and boredom, getting you interested in something. You could have gotten interested in throwing a ball up in the air and catching it and seeing how high you could throw it and still catch it. And it's funny how that does. I did that for a while where I had a basketball and I would just throw the basketball and try to catch it in one hand, throw it and catch it, and just see how many times you could do it without failing to catch the ball. So lots of ways to entertain the psychology, with little contests or little games. But that's all you're getting out of it is the fact that you've entertained it. You've taken it out of tedium and boredom and made it interested. Okay. But would I pay plague death for that? For that interesting thing? Just barely interesting, frankly. No. I wouldn't. And I'm just saying, so, you're saying I should think it's a great deal. Plague death for, trivial entertainment. But I don't. Yeah. And you should respect the fact that maybe your kids won't think it's a great deal either. But anyway, Yeah, so maybe that's enough. Well, I'll hit the pause button just to... We'll see if it's enough. We'll see if I'm really done. Alright, back already. Anyway, it wasn't very long. So I was just thinking about it in the context of just this one concept of the fact that you're going to die and you haven't done it yet. And, there's these people that are pro-life and pro-creation, and they haven't done this worst part of it yet. And they're just assuming it's okay. It's still a great deal. So, I'm sort of just arguing that, isn't it something to almost mock? And that's what I'm sort of doing, is mocking the very idea that you would think the opportunity to play all these little silly trivial games, no matter what they're going to be. I watch baseball. I watch guys kickbox each other to death. I watch, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm interested in World Wrestling Federation fun. Blah, blah, whatever the crap is. And that's worth dying for. Yeah, no, not even close. And the argument is that you have to include all of the gradations of death. You can't just say, well, death is a heart attack and it took 14 milliseconds. No, we're talking about getting maybe the worst of it, not the best of it. And you're still going to argue it's worth it, all these trivial little dramas of your little silly life with your silly little ambitions and your silly little, how do I get her into my bedroom? How do I maneuver this, and how do I connive that, and how do I scheme this, and how do I... All that bullshit is worth it? No, that's mockably idiotic. Ugh. It's just so... It is really hard to make these arguments sometimes, just because you're just saying they're just way too stupid. You really just can't bother. You're wasting your time because they're just so damn stupid. Because I see people, going back and forth on the sidewalk, and people who are a mess at 35 years old, and they're a mess physically, pushing a baby carriage. And they're both just fat-ass messes. And you're just like, what are they thinking? They're doing their kid a favor? It's bad habits, bad genetics. Frankly, the city sucks. There's just like pushing the baby carriage through a cesspool. It's just like, what the fuck are they thinking? How could they possibly imagine this to be a brilliant idea? I don't get it. Yeah, everybody's screwed up. I'm just saying that there's hoodlums and people who want to be a squirrel, and there's nobody's in reality anymore. It's just why would you introduce somebody to live one of those lives? To live this mundane, putrid existence. So anyway, but that's how, that's what poor, dumb, ignorant people do, is poor, dumb, ignorant things. Alright, anyway, so that's enough of a video. Yeah, but the poor, dumb, ignorant, poor. The poor, well, I think that's redundant. Poor twice. But anyway, the incompetent. The far from completed. Actualized. Yes, they're very far from actualized. They're just retards, frankly. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. The ignorance and stupidity is profound enough to call retarding. Because they can't do 2 plus 2, frankly. Alright, so anyway, 2 plus 2 logic. But yes, and it's all that religion crap is also, I want to just kind of throw that in there. But yeah, it's just like a ton of these people are, they're not hard religious, but they really do walk around on those on those crutches. They're always carrying that cane of religion as some sort of backup plan. And it's pathetic. And even religion is so pathetic because they get extraordinarily dressed up for it too, almost like it's a party. Sequins, all kinds, and you're just like, you really don't get the story at all, do you? I'm going to go praise Jesus in my sequinsed gown. I mean, how much sense does that make? Oh yeah, I don't think it makes any sense at all. Retarded. It's fucking retarded. Alright. So anyway, enough said, I think. Yeah, for today. So again, sorry there's no other video. I'm just thinking about how to next level. Yeah. How to make this, how to consolidate this into some apex or some focus and be done with it, because it really isn't that complicated an argument, as last week's video points out, and I really should be able to just talking point it and say, yeah, there's you really shouldn't have to say anything more. It's cruel to put kids on a tightrope over daggers. It's cruel and stupid. And that's what living is walking through a very dangerous minefield of bullshit. And if you can't concede, yes, that's what life is. It's a minefield of bullshit. Why? How do you rationalize yourself as a decent person if your ambition is to torment another human being by subjecting them to this gauntlet, of low probability, low probability of victory. There's just a really low probability of anything called actually winning. And you've seen it, like that Apple guy, king of the world, and then spends 7 years dying of pancreatic cancer. I mean, fuck that. Alright, just to scare the shit out of you, that story alone. Just how it can all be taken away like that. Alright, so till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot. That's enough of a video. It's very difficult trying to imagine how you communicate to retards. I'm just no good at it. See, if you were sensible people, I would have won the argument years ago, and I could go take naps and stuff. I could have more fun. But instead I have to do this.